Comparison price for Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. We're coming here from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver, where you can extend your game night with a staycation. Book a Comparison price exclusive rate at the Wall Center. Call the hotel, 604-331-1000. Tell them that Matt and Blake sent you. And some blackout dates apply there based on availability. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price. Mike Rogerson, four-time Juno Award winner, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you. Game days are here, Blake.
Can't freaking believe it.
24-25 is upon us with the Canucks' first preseason game against the Seattle Kraken. We'll get to that in a second. First, our daily poll question. Who finishes with more starts? Kevin Lankinen, Arturs Šilovs. You can vote at the Sakaris Price X and YouTube channels. Mr. Price, lead us off. Where are you going?
I don't think there's a bad news answer here. There's a way that both of these guys can be the right answer, and it's good news for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm going to say they use the waiver eligibility of Arturs Šilovs to their benefit, and he just spends a little less time with the NHL team once Thatcher Demko's here. So by virtue of that, I'm going to go Kevin Lankinen.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Šilovs may still need some more development here. I recognize that he played in some big-time Stanley Cup playoff games, but that was out of necessity. Let's remember that would not have been the plan as they saw it. The waiver eligibility is a thing. Now, I got Steven here replying to me on Twitter saying Tocchet trusts Šilovs in the playoffs over DeSmith, and that's correct. But at first, the initial move was made because of injury. It then became Arturs played so well that you had to keep going back there. So, yeah, I voted Lankinen as well, along the same lines as you. And
it's not bad news for Šilovs, Matt, because it's a one-year deal for Lankinen. It's not like DeSmith had a very nice year. He didn't get re-signed. I don't know that they have much of an intention on re-signing Lankinen unless he blows Šilovs away in terms of play. And I don't think we're forecasting that. Arturs Šilovs is not a perfect goalie yet, but I don't think we're being downers on Šilovs by voting as we are.
No, look, the trend now is to have three goaltenders, right? More teams are going to play three goaltenders this year than are going to play two. So that has become an area of emphasis for front offices to make sure that you have three capable National Hockey League goaltenders. And let's face it, there was a question there with Jiri Patera. He's played NHL games, but can he hold down even a backup job in the National Hockey League? That is something that was unknown, and that is something that the Vancouver Canucks did not want to risk, or certainly didn't want to risk him having to elevate to backup.
So let me ask you this. We've batted this around a little bit, and this is a poll question for sometime this season. It's not now, but we'll give a little sneak peek answer. Should the Canucks carry three goalies into the playoffs? If everything goes according to plan, they're a playoff team, and everybody in the crease plays fine. Everybody's got value to some degree. Do you trade the guy whose contract is expiring, or do you say no? We want to have three healthy bodies available.
So I think that question gets answered based on the health of Demko and Šilovs at the trade deadline for starters.
Does it though? Do you believe it? Demko's got full health at the trade deadline. Does it matter?
That's it. You still got another month to go there. Plus, of course, you have the playoffs to go, and you are hoping to be playing for 2 months in the playoffs. Right. So to answer your question, based on the way they've handled the goaltending the last two preseasons, because remember, Casey DeSmith was an addition via trade last year around this time, and now Kevin Lankinen via a free agent signing. Based on the way they've handled the goaltending the last two preseasons, it very much looks like this is a management group that is going to take the cautious approach when it comes to goaltending. And of course, their Pittsburgh experience, I think, proves instructive here as well, right? They won a Stanley Cup with Marc-Andre Fleury playing the bulk of games. They won a Stanley Cup with Matt Murray playing the bulk of games. I can remember at the draft in Chicago a number of years ago, Jim Rutherford, managing the Penguins, sauntered over to a table where a bunch of hockey scribes were sitting there shooting the breeze, and we started asking him about his team, and he had similar goaltending depth at the time. Tristan Jarry was coming on up, Delta's Tristan Jarry, and I can remember him saying, we really like him, but he is going to play another year in the American Hockey League and develop further before we make any moves with our goaltending depth. So I would think that Kevin Lankinen is here to stay. He's here to stay until the final Vancouver Canucks game. And I think, unless you get a scenario where Demko is healthy and fantastic and Šilovs has absolutely knocked it out of the park, where you feel completely comfortable with him playing playoff games, I would think that you don't even entertain any kind of trade offer for Lankinen.
And unless the market goes crazy.
An offer that, exactly. Yeah. Unless you're
if we're talking third round picks, forget
no, exactly.
No,
but if you're looking at a team that is just so desperate, they're going to give you a skater who can contribute, or so desperate they're going to give you a prize prospect or a first round pick. But look,
unlikely.
Very, very unlikely. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Canucks game starts tonight. Rogers Arena against the geographic rival Seattle Kraken from down the I-5. Let's get to the lineup as we think it's going to look tonight. Of course, there's always the caveat, things could change over the course of the day. But the way they skated this morning at Rogers Arena, Pius Suter going to play the middle between Brock Boeser and Jonathan Lekkerimäki. And interesting there on two fronts. Number one, they're going to play Lekkerimäki on the right wing and kick Boeser over the left wing. Number two, they put on the game day proster JT Miller. See JT Miller at Rogers Arena last week. We noted this. We said good on the organization for letting ticket holders know, or potential ticket buyers know, who is going to be participating in these preseason games. We said, that is the responsible thing to do from a business side of Canucks Sports Entertainment. And we said we hope that, the social media team, the marketing team, the players, and the coaches were all in coordination on that. Now, unless they got a surprise for us, it doesn't look like JT Miller is going to play in this game.
No.
So I'm not sure if it was cart before the horse. I don't know if it was lack of coordination. I don't know if they're just selling fool's gold, but disappointed to not see JT Miller there, given the promotion that he would be playing in the game. But
Chris on Twitter is responding to it, saying it looked like Miller took a stinger in the scrimmage, took a hit, came off wincing, favoring his shoulder. Maybe it's lingering a bit. It could be something like that.
That is always the case with a veteran, and that thus is the danger of promoting so far out a veteran player in a preseason game, right? So perhaps a lesson is learned here from Canucks Sports Entertainment in terms of how they go about promoting these games. We knew that Suter was going to move to the middle full time this year. Rick Tocchet had already talked about that. So given a pretty good assignment there. And you got to think that Lekkerimäki is going to be a hungry player with looking at, let's face it, still an uphill climb to make this roster, to make this lineup on opening night. I don't think it's an impossibility, but I do think he is going to have to prove head and shoulders better than some of the other options. Räty is going to play the middle. He's going to be flanked by Nils Höglander and Connor Garland. Nils Oman between Danton Heinen, his first time, local kid, putting on a Canucks jersey. Linus Karlsson playing that right wing. Max Sasson down the middle with Vilmer Ulriksson, the star of Young Stars, and Sammy Blais on his PTO playing the right wing as we matriculate to the defense pairs, EPD. And the distinction now is Elias Pettersson, the center, Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, with Philip Hronek. That is where he was stationed during training camp, so that continues. And yes, another plum assignment for a young player beside a bona fide NHLer. Christian Wolanin with Tyler Myers, Derek Forbert with Mark Friedman playing the right side. We anticipate Artur Šilovs and Ty Young of the Prince George Cougars going to be your goaltenders tonight?
And I think we have our answers to how John Shorthouse and or Brendan Basher will identify them in the same game. If that happens here in the preseason, maybe it's just going to be Elias back to Elias, a la Henrik passing to Daniel, just using first names to distinguish the two Pedersens. We should also mention the power play units. So Lekkerimäki clearly getting, an opportunity to shine here. He's on the first power play unit along with Besser, Suter, Heinen, and Roenick. They are putting this kid in position to succeed and then some. Like, you expect the guys like the Rätys of the world to get a look on power play too. That's not going to wow me too much. But the fact that Lekkerimäki's on the first power play unit, Matt, I mean, they're saying, kid, go out, show us what you've got. And we're going to have more on this throughout the course of the show. But, he's not odds on to make this team, but they're saying, can you? Like, they're asking him, can you make this team? And they're letting him try to prove it.
Yeah, and of course, there is still much more evaluation and getting to know Jonathan Lekkerimäki than there is with a lot of the veteran players. I know he came over for that cup of coffee with the AHL's Abbotsford Canucks at the end of last year, but they are still on a full-on evaluation process of Jonathan Lekkerimäki on the North American-sized ice in comparison to other players who I think they have a pretty good handle on what they do, what they don't do, and where they fit. So, yeah, he's going to be interesting to track. He's also on the poster for tomorrow's game in Abbotsford. And again, assuming that these posters are believable, playing back-to-back games, I think also probably tells you something about the leash and the evaluation process on Lekkerimäki, that the more the better right here in preseason. If he happens to save a veteran some extra miles on the legs heading into the regular season, well, that works too. Räty getting pretty good billing too, beside two NHLers and Garland and Höglander. So you gotta like the looks of that for Räty. He can't feel hard done by. I saw Jeff mention that Sammy Blais was on the list of players that he's going to be focusing on tonight. We talked about it over the last couple of days here. It is very difficult for a bang and crash shift disturber to make an impression in a training camp because it's friendly fire. You don't want to be going out there and knocking your own guys around. So his first opportunity to see another jersey across the ice, and we'll see if he can elevate himself from a PTO to a contract. And that very much could be a battle there. Sammy Blais and Jonathan Lekkerimäki in terms of the opening night of the seasonal roster they'll set with the NHL, and then of course the opening night lineup, which could be two different things. What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to this week, Blake?
Did you let the dogs out? Somebody let the dogs out, Matt.
I have cats, and if they got out, we got problems because they're indoor cats, and I'm home alone this week, so I'm on cat duty.
You're already overwhelmed here. Somebody let the dogs out. Yellow Dog's newest mix pack, the Dog Park 8 tall can mix pack, consists of 4 light and refreshing beers. The classic Retriever Golden Ale. You got your rollover Cerveza Negra, who I think we have some of those in the fridge. And 2 new brews exclusive to the mix pack, the Rascal Japanese Lager and the Pack Leader Pilsner. Check it out right now at your favorite private and government liquor stores.
So we will begin getting some insight here on who fits with whom for opening night. Now, let's go through just 3 of the position battles or lineup battles that we have been tracking and will continue to track as the Canucks go through this very busy stretch of 5 preseason games and 7 nights. First line left wing. JT Miller and Brock Besser, a cemented duo. Who's going to play left wing with them? Now, the betting money is on Danton Heinen, who is in the lineup tonight, playing with Nils Amon and Linus Karlsson. Does Dakota Joshua factor in here once he gets healthy, once he gets back to skating and practicing with his teammates following cancer surgery? Does Nils Höglander have a shot to move on up here and play with Besser and Miller and create a lot of scoring punch on that line. I think that's going to be an interesting battle here, Blake, as we shake it on out over the next couple of weeks. Fair to say Heinen is your leader right now, and it's just about whether or not someone can seize the brass ring there.
Yeah, I mean, basically, again, they tell us not to read into preseason lineups, and of course, that's the easy thing to say because you're so far away from a game that matters. But the truth is, they do use training camp and preseason assignments to judge suitability and chemistry and all that sort of thing. So it's not nothing the way that they had them lined up in training camp, and the fact that it was consistent. If you were really just throwing them in a blender, just devil may care, you'd see a lot of different options. They kept Danton Heinen with those two, Besser and Miller, throughout the training camp. So it means something. Now, 4 guys in the lineup tonight, I would say, are candidates to play with those guys. But of course, they're not actually playing with those guys. So they're not being tested with Besser and Miller. But Lekkerimäki, Höglander, Heinen are all in the lineup, and even Connor Garland's the utility knife. You never know where you're going to find him on the left or the right side, and you can sort of plug him in when you just don't see another option that looks great. So I'd say you got 4 guys to watch here tonight, although it's a little bit tricky because they're not watching them with that pairing. So
no, and look, it's not an impossibility, but I would be surprised to see another right shot there. Besser is a right shot, so Lekkerimäki, Garland as right shots, perhaps better on the second line beside Pettersson and DeBrusk, and that was the next topic I was going to get to. Who's going to play right wing on the second line with Jake DeBrusk on the left, Elias Pettersson at center ice. I think, the right shots there are interesting. Some would say that, you want a right shot on that line for those 2 guys. So is that Lekkerimäki? Is that Garland? Is that Daniel Sprong? Could Kiefer Sherwood have a meteoric rise up the lineup this year? So I think those are this camp, this preseason. So I think those are your possibilities on right wing for the second line. And then, partner, we get to the second pair, assuming that Quinn Hughes is going to play with Philip Hronek, and Quinn Hughes has already given voice to, hey, it's not broken. Why would you try and fix it? Hughes had a Norris Trophy winning season alongside Philip Hronek. Philip Hronek had a splendid first half of the year before injuries slowed him in the second half. But, the one thing with Hughes and Hronek, you have one of the NHL's better defense pair when those guys are up and running at full tilt. We anticipate Carson Soucy to be the second pair left side guy. Those are minutes for the most part that he held down last season. And so Tyler Myers, Vincent Desharnais. We know they like Desharnais. We know they think he has more to give. We know he's a monster, just shy of Myers in terms of height. He's got the breadth as well. Myers or Desharnais on the second pair? Is that how you see it boiling down, Blake?
It's a question of how you spread the butter. Do you want you don't have much butter here to begin with on this piece of toast here, Matt. Do you try to make all of the piece of toast palatable, or do you have a half a piece of toast that's quite good?
I like butter spread throughout the toast.
But it's going to be still pretty dry. It's still going to be pretty dry.
Yeah.
There's not a lot. This isn't a big pat of butter here.
Why can't I just have more butter?
There is no more butter. We went to the fridge. There's no more butter. All you've got in terms of somewhat mobility is Soucy and Myers.
Do I have any margarine? Do I have any mayo?
No. You don't even have, I can't believe it's not butter. You don't even have any of that left right now. So, until they make an acquisition of more butter, aka a legitimate right shot second pair defenseman, where are you on just that, on that approach? Do you do a more certified second pairing and just have a third pairing that you're a little nervous about? Or do you try to mitigate disaster by having a decent skater on each of those lines, a la Soucy, Desharnais, and Forbert with Myers?
Well, I'm going to choose spreading out.
Yeah.
Just like I like my toast buttered. I would try Desharnais with Soucy there to start.
Whew.
for the reasons you outline about spreading things out with a good skater, because Tyler Myers is still a pretty good skater.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think you've got to begin transitioning Tyler Myers to the third pair. We mentioned it many, many times last year. He was more appropriately slotted than when he had to play more minutes and further up the lineup prior to the Filip Hronek acquisition. And he was better. He had a good year. Now, I do think you're probably going to have to rely on him to play second pair right side minutes this year anyway, just because I think Desharnais is a little bit more limited of a defenseman. The skating, I think, is big. They're the puck skills as well, Blake. I mean, Myers, I think, is a little better with the puck as well. But I look at it and I say to myself, I want to help out Derek Forbort more than I need to help out Carson Soucy. And so that's why I think I would start playing Myers with Forbort and Soucy and Desharnais together. And here's the thing, Blake. We can get caught up in labels, second pair, third pair.
Yeah.
It may not matter.
It
might be equal. It could be equal deployment, and it would very much be situational depending on the game. Needless to say, if you're trailing by a goal, I think you're probably going to want to see more of Tyler Myers out there, right? If you're defending a lead, you may shorten the bench on defense in the third period anyways. So, I mean, I've labeled it, but I don't think we necessarily need to get caught up in labels because I don't think it's going to be too dissimilar in deployment if they go that way, splitting up Myers and Soucy.
And on PK, I don't know that it matters as much. And, those are the four guys that are going to be killing penalties, I would suspect, rather than the top two guys. So, I think you just try to get through 60 minutes of hockey however you can, right? So the more time you can eat up the clock with those guys out there is a bonus to you because you're trying to prevent Hronek and Hughes from getting to 28 minutes regularly, right? So anytime there's a PK, it's the four big guys out there for the most part eating pucks as much as they can, and you're just eating up more clock to get to 60 minutes. And at 5-on-5, you just try to have the top four guys out there as much as you possibly can, and obviously Hughes and Hronek as much as you can.
Let's highlight this for a second because Lekkerimäki gets the billing and he gets the plum assignment on what looks to be the top line tonight with Suter and Besser. He's trying to make the team. But let's highlight a few other guys here, and we've mentioned Sammy Blais as well. Nils Amon and Linus Karlsson. This is a very important game for them, as every preseason game will be. Mm-hmm. Karlsson, a dark horse to make it, but he was oftentimes the first forward called up last season. Nils Amon wants to be an NHL player again this year, right? Well, your roster spot is very much up for grabs. The competition is fierce. He needs to rise to the occasion. I don't want to focus on Ulrichs and all that much because I think he's just going back to junior. Same with Sasson. I think Sasson and Räty, okay, outside chances, but I would be a little bit surprised. And then there's Mark Friedman. Because if you're cutting up a team with 13 forwards and 8 defense, that bodes well for Mark Friedman. They don't have to do it that way, right?
Well, they have to have 3 goalies probably on the roster. As long as
going to get to Šilovs here in a second, but yes. Whether I was going to say you can go 14 forwards or you can go 3 goaltenders, which they may have to. So Mark Friedman, this is a very big night for him in terms of, do you want to be an NHLer? And we know for the most part last year he was behind glass, break in case of emergency defenseman. But is it possible that he shakes out and becomes an odd guy off the roster and having to clear waivers to go to Abbotsford or maybe on his way to another NHL team?
That's the thing.
It's a very big night, I think, for Mark Friedman, much like every preseason game will be big for those guys on the roster bubble for the start of the season.
If he doesn't want to have to go to the DMV and get a new driver's license for a new address, it behooves him to avoid the waiver wire and try to make this club. He's behind the 8 ball, though. I don't have a whole lot of hope for Friedman to make the opening night roster. And I joke a little bit. I don't know that he gets claimed either. I think he's probably safe to get.
No, I don't think so.
Abbotsford.
Well, put it this way, Blake. Before this goaltending business, I had him on the roster. I had him as the 8th defense. Well, I suspect carrying 8th defenseman.
Yeah. Potentially. I think Sasson and Räty, too, by the way, are sort of trying to get to the Amon Carlson point, right? That's what they're trying to get. They're trying to climb that one half rung, if you will, to get to the bubble guys. Carlson has to be careful that he doesn't turn into Amon, in that Amon is on the edge here of, yes, you're good enough to play in the NHL, but are you good enough to stay in the NHL? And for that, you do need to be noticeable every now and then. Every now and then. And I've never noticed him, ever. So Carlson has had a couple of cups of coffee here. And again, the noticeability is just not there. In today's NHL, eating, and we used to say this about fourth liners, just complete the shift, don't commit a mistake, get off. I don't know that we think that way anymore. You'll certainly stay longer than the guy that is committing mistakes, but you've got to contribute something. And it doesn't necessarily have to end up on the box score, but you need to threaten. And I don't know that I see Amon threatening much, and Carlson has to be careful of that as well. Great that you're responsible. That will earn you the trust of the coach for a short time. But eventually you need to show that you can eventually create something as well. So in these watered down NHL events where half the team is made up of American leaguers, this is the time for guys like Oman and Carlson to say, no, I am a cut above here. I can be an NHL player.
Especially with a playoff team, right? Yeah. I mean, for years, Blake, let's remember, and it clouded the lens through which we see some of these players. The great Bochford shout about the Sea of Granlands.
Yeah.
But you're right. In that environment, it was don't make mistakes. And if you don't make mistakes, then you're going to get another shift. And heck, at that time, it was just about, can you minimize the errors and the beating of yourself? And that gives you a greater opportunity to win the game, because let's face it, you were a counterattack team with not a lot of offensive ability, which more often than not was giving up the lion's share of shots and chances.
If they're Sharks camp right now, they're okay.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a playoff team, you have an interest in forging 4 forward lines, all of which have identity, all of which have role. You're quite right, Blake. There's not many passengers in the forward ranks of a playoff team, particularly a well-balanced playoff team that's looking to go multiple rounds. I mean, come the trade deadline, your bosses are going to be looking to improve whoever is on the fourth line, right? Or at least create greater depth and competition for those spots. So no, you're quite right. The Omans, the Carlsons of the world, and this is why I think a lot of people think that Sammy Blais has a route to a contract and a job on this team.
You can notice Sammy Blais, right?
Exactly, because Sammy Blais is going to be a pebble in the other team's shoe. Now, if he crosses the line and commits stupid penalties, then he is hurting you. And then, he's disposable. But if he plays his game and plays it on that edge, on that line, without putting you at disadvantage in the penalty box, then you've got a player who, in, let's face it, a longer sample size of NHL work, we can look at and identify as a guy who's got a role, who brings something to the table that thus far the Nils Omans and Linus Karlssons of the world have not yet shown us. We shall see. No Kevin Lankinen tonight, everybody. He just got to town from Finland. He has spoken with in-house media there.
And he is on the ice. Literally, as we're speaking right now, he's on the ice taking shots. So
I wouldn't suspect he plays tomorrow either, but who knows? We shall see. Again, Šilovs and Young. And the thing I was going to say about Šilovs, Blake, is, suddenly this is a competitive situation for him now, right? Like suddenly this game means a little bit more, is a little more weighted. It is not out of the realm of possibility that Thatcher Demko could return here in advance of the season opener. We also have the roster, and of course him being waiver exempt, so he doesn't require waivers to be sent back down. He is absolutely going to be on the big team if Thatcher Demko isn't ready to go for the start of the season. But the way you go about cutting your lineup and your roster at the beginning of the season, Šilovs now has something to play for here.
Doesn't want to stub his toe. doesn't want to just allow any sort of cracks in the armor here.
Exactly, because, in the best case scenario for Šilovs, he's your starting goalie, your starter on opening night. The guy's going to play most of the games while Thatcher's out. The flip side is if Demko can get back, Lankinen shows well, you're the third organizational goalie as well. So quite a big dispersion of potential roles for Šilovs, particularly given Thatcher Demko and his health. Timeline still unknown. Here's the other thing to look for tonight, folks, if you're watching the game, going to the game. And we mentioned this earlier in the week. Rick Tocchet has pledged to change his offensive approach, generate more rush chances, generate more scoring chances, and shots on goal. Last year, the Vancouver Canucks, the number of rush chances they generate, their shots on goal at even strength, they ranked with non-playoff teams. If you looked at those two stats, you would sit there and go, that's a team that, maybe fighting for the playoffs, let alone winning the division. They were able to compensate for those stats being so poor by NHL standard because they finished a ridiculous percentage of their chances early in the season, and because they played exceptional team defense and were able to win those tight, low-scoring games. Now, I thought there was a fabulous piece from Thomas Drance on The Athletic here, where he talked about how training camp focused on breakout drills and transition work. Let's hear from Coach Tocchet first here on changing the offensive approach, and then we'll get to the example that Drance cited on his Athletic piece in terms of how they plan to achieve this. Here's Coach Tocchet on changing the offensive approach.
It's not like brain surgery or we're trying to reinvent the wheel, but there are stuff that I think, especially off the rush or off our breakouts, where we can attack better. And I think we've done a good dive into it. We got some good video for the players. We got some good drills. I don't want to bore you guys exactly what it is, but a lot of times we're not getting the puck to the middle enough, and we're only having a certain chunk of players middle driving enough. So I think if you do that, I think if we get our D up in the play a little bit more, not just Hughes, that'll help. But our breakouts are really good. It's just that we're not, like I said, you guys, sometimes we break out and we're ahead of everybody, but somehow the other team catches up to them. And I don't think it's the other team's faster. I think sometimes we play a little bit safer. Guys are just content and chipping a puck in. Because we were one of the best teams, forechecking teams, especially on the same side ship. But I think there's more weak side plays for us, and I think that's on me to get the players to do that and give them a playbook when it comes to that. So I expect a lot of myself to get some of this information to these guys, especially early, so we can apply it and do a lot of reps with it.
And that was talking before they even stepped on the ice last week in Penticton. Now, juxtapose that with what Drance reported with how they went about drilling this. So Blake, the weak side winger, is going to swing to the middle of the ice. Remember him say drive the middle?
Mm-hmm.
The center is going to fade off to the weak side, and the strong side winger is going to skate full tilt. What they're trying to do, they're trying to get that long pass from the defenseman to that weak side winger driving the center of the ice. If they complete it, this is a rush opportunity, or at least it should be a rush opportunity with the other winger going full tilt and with the center iceman there on the weak side for support. If they don't happen to complete the pass, and let's face it, it is a difficult pass to make. There will be skates, sticks in the way. A lot of opponents, they try to. They're playing defense. But if they don't complete the pass, what they're hoping for there is a deflection into the zone, and that effectively works as a dump in, but it works as a dump in with greater pace. And that is designed to better exploit the Canucks' strengths on the forecheck that he just outlined. So we said he went in the lab. Well, it should make for more entertaining hockey at Rogers Arena and on the road if they're completing some of these passes and getting that great tape-to-tape connection between the defense and the forward ranks. But a lot of training camp was spent on those sorts of drills, so much so that DeBrusk, said to Grant, well, it's kind of a weird drill to be doing in training camp. It's clear it wasn't conventional. It's clear that this isn't something that a lot of teams spend time on. But Tocchet pledged after last season, look, we got to find ways of generating more offense, generating more rush chances, and put his money where his mouth was in terms of how he structured the training camp and the practices and the drills. New this year, be looking for the Vancouver Canucks trying to transition that puck a little bit more quickly, because remember, last year, for the most part, they were content to hold on to the puck. They viewed it as a defensive tactic. If we have the puck, then they don't have the puck. And even if we have the puck in the offensive zone and we're passing up shots on goal, at the very least, that works to the defensive side of the ledger.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
If not to the off,
Rick Tocchet was surprised, wondering why they would get the puck, they would get out ahead, and why teams would catch up to him. And he was, I can tell you why, because the team was playing your structured defensive system. That's why they didn't continue forward. They did not want to make themselves susceptible to the counter. So that's going to be the flip side of this, particularly in the early going before they find that this is perfected, is if you're Kevin Lankinen and Artur Šilovs, well, and it's a good thing that both of these goalies have good statistical numbers in rush chances against themselves, and that I think they're going to give up some. I think we're going to see that they work on what's the safest play, what pass gets intercepted the most here when we do this, what has us leaning the wrong direction and gives the other team rush chances against. We're going to see all that play out here in the preseason in the month of October, and hopefully it doesn't sting them too badly here. But I think for the most part, it's probably the right thing, because we saw them rather neutered in the back half of last season. And considering there's high-end talent on this team, this shouldn't be a team that for a 40-game chunk looks neutered. 10-game chunks, ever the best teams go through the 10-game chunks where they are struggling to put the puck in
and the other thing and the other thing that this is designed to do, right, is look, when Pettersson and Miller are on the ice, you're great there. But if the strength of the team is at wing, then this is the ability to get some of those wingers the puck in flight as the primary puck handler as you head on into the offensive zone on the rush. We'll see how it works, but I absolutely love the fact that Tocchet was introspective enough, self-scouted enough, because we talked about it last year when he mentioned all this, Blake. There are a lot of NHL coaches who wouldn't dare go near this topic in a public forum, right? No. I'm not going to talk about that either, because they have insecurities or they just don't want to let the public in. Tocchet, as we know, is happy to talk on most every topic, understands that this is a pretty bright hockey market. I mean, you're not in Arizona anymore. You're not in Tampa anymore. People here play the game, coach the game, have watched the game, understand the nuance of the game. And so that Tocchet has laid all of this on out, not just to his players, but to fans alike. And now we're going to get a chance to track it, see how it works, see if the improvements are there, and see if, as he's talked about before, you got to grow as a coach, you got to grow as players.
Well, he also,
this organization can grow and mix some of this in while still staying as strong as they have been to their team defensive detail. That was so important to last year, underpinning the success.
NHL coaches are also very reticent to make changes that completely match what fans and media have been asking of the team, and yet he doesn't seem to be that afraid of that. In fact,
his answer was, "That's fair." Like when that was asked of him at the season-ending presser last year, he said, "That's fair."
Yeah, like he knows. Yeah, we've got a pretty good offensive team. We could probably play a little bit more open, generate a few more rush chances.
Yep, get a little more out of them. Yep.
Remember, folks, last fall they were amazing, but only because they shot and scored on like the first rush chance that they would get. Their shooting percentage was so high. They seemed like a rush chance team, but it was only just that they were so efficient at it that they appeared to. Remember, they were at the top of the league in the rush goal category.
Yeah,
but they weren't anywhere.
Their conversion percentage,
because their conversion, but their rush chance
was down at the bottom. It was last at one point. It was last, Blake. It was last in the league at one point. And you're right. Early in the season, at one point, they were best in the league in rush chance goals on the absolute smallest sample.
So for out of market people watching,
way outsized conversion rate.
Think about out of market people watching the Canucks probably thought the Canucks were this high, wheeling and dealing team, because if you're just watching the highlights, all you're seeing is the Canucks scoring on rush chances.
It was the tale of two halves: team offense in the first half of the year, team defense in the second half of the year. That's why they were able to forge 108 points. So tomorrow at Abbotsford Center against the Calgary Flames, the Canucks have billed Carson Soucy, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, Arshdeep Bains, Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson, Jake DeBrusk, and Tyler Myers. I would have liked to have seen Bains at Rogers Arena tonight. And they've seen him in Abbotsford, right? I would have liked to have seen the local kid from Surrey at Rogers Arena tonight. But let me just throw this at you, because we've mentioned Demko. There is no timeline. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he could. I mean, he's on the ice. He's facing shots, right? So it's a muscle injury that doesn't require surgery, that he's just going to have to get accustomed to playing through. Of course, as we know, once the regular season starts, Blake, you're playing for keeps. There are no nothing games. Do you test Demko in a preseason game towards the end of the preseason?
I mean, if
and you sit there and you tell him, Thatcher, we don't need you for opening night. You take as long as you want. But there are no other dress rehearsals available to us past the last preseason game. How do you feel about playing 30 minutes or a period or what have you? Just to get in the flow of having to deal with this knee muscle injury and the discomfort or the whatever that is going to affect him.
Well, he does have a conditioning stint available to him if they felt like that would be useful, and that's the beauty of the AHL team being where it is. It's not a huge inconvenience to send him for a game or two.
Fair enough.
With the Abbey Canucks as well. I mean, it's impossible for me to say yes or no, because we just don't know officially what that pain tolerance is needed for right now, where he is. But if they're sort of at a wishy-washy point where they're not sure, then sure, yeah, absolutely, but throw them in and see what happens. If they don't think there can be more damage done, I guess is usually one of those big questions. Can more damage be done? If the answer is no, and it's a pain tolerance thing, and he agrees that feels like a reasonable step, then sure.
Yeah.
But we're not behind that curtain to know the answers.
No, I know.
Necessarily.
To me, that is going to be a question here over the next week. Is Thatcher Demko available to even just test himself out in a preseason game? And you're right about a conditioning stint. Gosh, so rare that you see a player of that ilk on a conditioning stint, but yes, that would be available to them.
But for a goalie and for this particular kind of thing, because of what we're talking about, like pain tolerance, is it going to kill me after 22 minutes?
Yeah,
it would make a lot of sense, but we'll see.
I want to tackle a couple of things from around the league here. Number one, Pierre LeBrun on The Athletic writing a column about offer sheets and how they may become a little more popular than they have been in the past. The quote from one GM, "Make no mistake, the barn door has been opened after what Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues did this summer in offer sheeting successfully." Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg of the Edmonton Oilers. And if you're looking at casting an eye around the NHL, Jake Neighbors in St. Louis, Matt Rempe with the Rangers, Matthew Nyes in Toronto, Alexander Holtz in Vegas, all offer sheet eligible next summer. Alan Walsh with an interesting quote, the player agent in the story, saying that he feels that the offer sheets in the $1.5 to $4.5 million range, Blake, so effectively what Broberg and Holloway or roughly thereabout, when the compensation is second and third round picks, like that's pretty good deal. So the moral of this story being that via the Edmonton Oilers, I think a lot of GMs learned this past summer that you don't just want to be cap compliant with pending RFAs. You've got to have cap cushion with those, because if
cap defense, but really
exactly, because if you put yourself in jail, right, where signing your RFAs gets you so far and above the allowance in the off season, and you're allowed to be 10% over the cap, that teams are going to be more predatory on your RFAs. And of course, these are young players. These are, for a lot of teams, future building blocks. I mean, in Edmonton's case, everything is about this year and finally delivering a cup. But for other teams, players of the Holloway and Broberg order would be a lot more important than they are to the Edmonton Oilers this year. Anyways, it's just, we have talked so many years about the offer sheet being a available tool that really, for sensibility and feelings, haven't been used by NHL GMs. And if Doug Armstrong ignited an era, and LeBron makes the point that, this wasn't a kick-up fuss around the NHL. This wasn't Brian Burke threatening, after Edmonton signed. Yeah, exactly. That this went quietly, for the most part, quietly into the night. Successful offer sheets may very well unlock this tool for GMs going forward.
Well, I think we mistakenly, when this tool was first unveiled, I think we mistakenly thought this would be a way for you to pike a star player from another team.
Right.
But of course, you're always going to match a difference maker. You're going to take the lump,
of course,
of the contract, and you're always but we never really thought of it as a tool to rob a depth player.
I mean, Kessler, Kotkaniemi, there have been Oland, if I'm not mistaken, way back when, there have been sort of young on the rise players who have been signed to offer sheet, but no, you're quite
promise. I think the Kotkaniemi deal was with an eye to one day this guy's going to get 65 points and $4 million is going to be a steal. So that's why they did that. And even Kessler to some degree as well. So, I think Broberg's probably what he is, and Holloway to a degree as well. I think that's probably what they are.
They're both one-time first-round picks that I think, certainly if you're St. Louis, you think they have upside from what they've shown in the National Hockey League so far. Anyways, look, if the offer sheet is now real, if the offer sheet is now a tool that is going to be used around the NHL, your summer as a GM just got busier, and your cap compliance and your cap planning just got more complicated.
Your AGM in charge of the cap just got a little bit more nervous.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because in the past, let's face it, you didn't have to worry about this all that much. Another thing I want to highlight, our old friend Torts in Philly. Guy Gaudreau, the father of Johnny and Matthew. Torella calls him and asks him to help coach at practice as a way of supporting the Gaudreau family. He said he never met him, the father. He said he never even met Johnny or Matt. He said Guy was hesitant at first, and so they said, hey, your timetable. You ever want to come on out here and just help Torts and the staff with practice, by all means, come on out. Well, he gave it a go yesterday. Torella gave him his training camp manual to make him feel like a full-fledged member of the coaching staff. They said they're going to take it slow here. Guy said, maybe he goes out a couple of more times. Torts said he thought it would be therapeutic for Mr. Gaudreau and the family, and even joked in his press conference yesterday, he was giving me shit that I was yelling at the players to skate harder. He said, John, you've only got 3 lines out here. How hard do you expect them to go? So anyways, just a marvelous gesture from the former head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, of the Gaudreau family, and what they're going through. I saw Meredith, widow to John, tweeted, John and Maddie would love this. They're so proud of their dad. I know this made them smile as they watched down from heaven. So touching story there. Well done, John Torella.
As we have said with John Torella, he is a bit of an enigma. He at times can be off the rocker, sort of with anger and frothing at the mouth, and then other times amongst the more sentimental coaches you'll find in the NHL. So he is, he's all of it.
Well done on the fields. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta Bar. Hockey season right around the corner, but even before that gets going, still plenty going on in Greta. Baseball, football, soccer, And once hockey season does get going, Greta, great spot for all games, home and away. We'll be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season. October 19th, circle that day. May very well be there that night. More details on that is coming soon. We're minutes from the arena and stadium. Come by anytime before or after the game. Check out the great street food menu and the arcade, the most popular arcade. Weekly drink specials at Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova, and a Greta bar. Let the games begin. Fantastic interview today with Chris Mason, Nashville Predators color analyst, and of course, former National Hockey League goaltender. We reached out to Chris after the Kevin Lankinen signing. He, of course, has called his games and watched him prepare and play over the last couple of seasons with the Preds. So he gives us terrific insight there on Lankinen and gives us terrific insight on Kiefer Sherwood as well. Talks on Kiefer Sherwood as well as, taking us into what he would be thinking on this Canucks goaltender predicament, both the uncertainty around Thatcher Demko and what he saw from Artur Šilovs last year in the playoff series against the Preds. So Chris Mason is coming up next. We'll have Cam Robison as well from Elite Prospect go through the Canucks issues there. Lankinen, Lekkerimäki, Höglander, Myers, Desharnais all feature in our conversation with Cam, as well as some of the young prospects who have been reassigned or about to be reassigned here by Canucks Sports and Entertainment, or Vancouver Canucks hockey operations. Best bets from Bet365. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Securus and Price. And here's the thing, Blake. I would like to think that the BC Lions are mad as hell and are going to go on out and inflict all their frustration on the Hamilton Tiger Cats Friday at BC Place. But in all honesty, I just can't figure this team out. The Tiger Cats are playing better football right now. Bo Levi Mitchell's actually leading the CFL in passing yardage. And you're getting that magic number 7 points. You know how I feel about it, right? Like 7, 7.5. I'm usually taking those. 6, 6.5. I'm usually laying those. It's at 7 right now, so I'm going to take the visitors and 7 points Friday at BC Place.
I'm turning my attention to the home side in the President's Cup, which begins a couple days.
Friday.
USA and the international squad replete with Canadians. Usually it's the USA that wins. USA is the favorite.
Everyone but one. Well, there was one tie, but yes. Mm-hmm.
But you know what? The Canadians have manufactured some magic of late, whether on their own accord or, you go back to Mike Weir versus Tiger Woods, and there's a pride there. I'm going to go plus 225 on the international side.
On the internationals to win?
To win it all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes, this has proved a very difficult tournament for the internationals over the years. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Chris Mason on Lankinen, Šilovs, Demko, and all things goaltending coming up next.
Normally when we talk about Greta Bar YVR, we're telling you make it a game night at Greta, and we're talking about hockey. Of course, we're not quite yet at hockey season, but game night can mean whatever it means, and that could mean soccer or football game to watch on the screen or your own games, because the arcade is half the fun at Greta Bar YVR. Make it your game night at 50 West Cordova. And of course, great food and drink specials. And you can also make it a late game night, as they're open late every single night. So make it a late game night, your game night at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center in this next interview, presentation of the Vancouver Canadians. They are thanking Seas fans for another great season at the Nat this summer. If you're looking to guarantee your seats for all the action in 2025, please visit CanadiansBaseball.com or call 604-872-5232. Chris Mason played 326 games in the National Hockey League between the pipes and has served as a Nashville Predators color analyst with Bally Sports South. He joins us now. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm getting, I think like we all are, we're getting jacked up for hockey season coming around here. And just getting back into the swing of things feels good.
Yeah, it sure does. Canucks play their first preseason game tonight. Kevin Lankinen will not play, but we anticipate seeing the new goaltender here at some point this week during a busy preseason schedule.
Might take the game day skate just to get the gear on, for heaven's sakes.
Mm-hmm. Chris, tell us everything you know about Kevin Lankinen after covering him for the last couple of years.
First of all, he's a great guy. He's very interesting. He's a very intellectual, soft-spoken, mild-mannered type of a guy. He's a big-time student of the game. I think when he came into the league with Chicago, he got, was up for Rookie of the Year, and the year after that had trouble kind of establishing himself as a starting goaltender. Came to Nashville, really worked on his game. I think he got his mindset right, and what impressed me most with his time in Nashville was his ability just really to be put in any situation, whether he was playing behind UC Saros, hadn't played for 2 weeks, put him against a top place team in the league. He comes in, he played well. His consistency throughout his time in Nashville was just was really impressive. The mental preparation that he puts in to being able to handle those situations. He's also able to play as starting goaltender minutes as he may have to do depending on Demko's situation, and certainly relieve him and give him a lot more rest as the season goes on. So I think the Canucks got a great goaltender. They couldn't really got a better guy, I think, and especially at the price they got him, which is also could be a really good opportunity career-wise for Lankinen, depending on how things go with Demko.
Takes the rush off of the situation for the Vancouver Canucks, and Artur Šilovs is as good as he played, and we'll ask you more about that series in a second here. But Šilovs played very well, but I don't think anybody wants to hand him the keys to the car right now and say go play 40 to 50 games here this season. So having a platoon situation until they're comfortable bringing Demko in on a more full-time basis, that's probably good for both of these guys who have never really proven themselves yet as a number one, either of them, Lankinen included, right?
Yeah, I think Šilovs too. What he did last year, I think that was really impressive going into that situation. Not even probably the start of that series, not even think he's going to see any ice time. Came in and played the way that he did. I thought for a young guy, he handled a lot of that situation with a lot of poise. As you guys know, Vancouver's not an easy market, especially for a goaltender. It'll be very interesting to keep an eye on Demko. Obviously, he's one of the best in the game when healthy. But I think Vancouver's in a situation where they've got two really good options, and it's young in Šilovs' career, early in his career. But what I've seen from him and what he showed in playoffs, I thought he's a guy that looks like he's got a lot of potential.
Lankinen and Chris, break him down stylistically for us.
He's very structured. He looks clean in the net. There's not a lot of extra movement. He's really worked hard on his game. He can get athletic and get powerful if he has to, but he's got really good, and I think this will be really good for similar style of goaltending the Canucks like. There's very good spatial awareness and recognition in his net. He's not going to be over aggressive, going after pucks, diving all over the place, and he's a very good student of the game. I can't wait. You guys should get him on one time. He does this thing after every time he gets off the ice. He's got a little sheet of paper, and he puts a little dot on it, whether it's practice, pregame skate, or a game, whether it went good or bad, and just to be thankful and just to show gratitude that he gets to go to the rink every day in the NHL and go on the ice, and counts that as a blessing. And I really think that his mindset and the way that he looks at the game, really puts him in a good situation to help the Canucks out in their situation.
Mindset's a good topic. Where do you think his is at this point, Chris? Waited all summer, was hoping to get a free agent deal, and then had to settle for a one-year deal when camps began.
Yeah, I think, that's a really interesting situation, because I thought he would go right away. And I think, and you guys will have to ask him, but I think he was waiting. He didn't want to be the backup to a guy that's going to play 60 games where he was in Nashville. I know the Predators wanted him back. They ended up signing another good option in Scott Wedgwood. But I think for Lankinen, he was trying to find a situation where he'd be able to get more time in the net and maybe get an opportunity like something like they're doing it in Vancouver now with the uncertainty in Demko, where, he could actually potentially establish himself as a number one. There's not a lot of places you can do that. I thought Calgary might have been, another option for him potentially with their situation. But I think with Vancouver and Demko, this is as good as it gets. But I was very surprised. I thought he'd be one of the guys that got scooped up. That July 1st, all goalies in those situations get signed right away. But I think this was a personal preference thing where he was waiting for an opportunity like this, and cost effective for the Canucks. I mean, they got nothing to lose, and a potential opportunity for Lankinen.
Goalie markets are weird, though, aren't they, right now? In terms of how much of the cap percentage-wise you want to devote to goaltending, what goalies will get at the trade deadline. Everybody wants a great goalie. Nobody wants the best goalie because you have to pay the best goalie. How long is it going to be until we see another Carey Price contract? I mean, we're getting veered off here a little bit, but it trickles down to Lankinen, I think, in that it almost feels like the position's being a tad disrespected, or is it in the NFL, Chris, which I'm sure you've been inundated with since you moved down there, like a running back, you don't invest in a running back, but the next one's going to come. And is that the goaltending position right now in the NHL?
I feel it's a great topic. I mean, we could sit here talking hours on that one alone, because I think you're right. I think a lot of teams want to build their teams certain ways. You see, the Oilers, they've dumped a lot of their money into two players and try to fill in around that. You get into kind of depth problems, I think, when you're looking at the third, fourth lines. Goaltending, you don't pay as much. Goaltenders have won the Stanley Cup. Aiden Hill the year before. Bobrovsky's one that has the Carey Price contract where he's making $10 million, and he had a great playoff run the last couple of years. Shesterkin's trying to get that money you're talking about, and I think, I'm not sure what Swayman's trying to do, but you're right, it's really changing. But I think, as you guys know, and as we've seen, everybody wants 1, 2, and sometimes you need 3 good goaltenders in your organization, like the Canucks had to deal with last year in the playoffs. Edmonton had their goalie issues in the playoffs. They ended up kind of sorting it out with Skinner coming around there, but he was taken out of the net, and it's just
it gets expensive. If you have one guy making 9 but you need 2 more, it gets expensive, right?
Absolutely. And what if the guy that you're paying 9, all of a sudden he goes through a tough stretch, and then you're playing, your second guy, your backup goaltender. It's a tough one. That's why, there's not many guys that you can say, like a Demko, when healthy, what you're going to get. You're going to get star goaltending, but now his health has been, kind of a factor. So, how do you quantify that salary cap wise? Can you go and pay him a massive contract with, those kind of issues? UC Saros for the Nashville Predators, who I covered, just got a big deal, but he's one of those guys too. You can count on him. He's going to play 60, 65 games. Vasilevsky, but there's a handful of guys in the league that do that now. And I think, to your point, a lot more teams are not paying the $10 million guy, and they're kind of getting 2 guys that are going to maybe fight for the net, or one A and then the 1B guy, who could potentially, depending on the situation during the season, take the net for a certain amount of time. So it's a tough situation, and not many war horses like there were back in the day with Brodeur, and not many guys like that anymore.
Yeah. Chris, you've played the position. Put yourself in Thatcher Demko's skates here. You've got an injury to an obscure muscle behind the knee. It can't be fixed with surgery. It's going to give you some pain, and you may just have to play through it from this point forward. How unsettling would all this be?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a great thing to think about. Not for Demko. I'm sure he's just had a horrible off season. You've probably seen 100 doctors trying to get a clear answer of first what it is, and then how to get this rectified. Are you gonna have to play with it throughout the your entire career? Is this something that can be rehabbed and go away, and you can get back to 100%? I don't know anything about this injury, and apparently not many people do. It's nobody in hockey, in the history of hockey's ever had it. So this is something that it's probably been a real tough summer for Thatcher Demko. I thought last year he really put himself on the map as a star in this league, and as a guy that can go out and be consistent and really dominate long stretches during the season, and really put the team on his back. And then, for him, he got injured in playoffs. I don't know if this is that injury, or if it's something that happened in the off season, but I just really feel for him. And you never want to see a guy, that's got such great potential, and early in his career, have something that could potentially impact him for the rest of his career.
What did young Šilovs show you in the playoff series last year?
To me, this is a guy I was really impressed. I think any goaltender, anytime you see a goaltender, they're all very skilled. They all look very similar in their skill sets. Where you come up, you're like, wow, this kid can play. But what impressed me most was his ability to handle the big, bright, shining lights of the playoffs in the NHL. I had a couple playoff series. I know what it's like. It changes. It's not easy. I don't know if I would have been able to handle that at his age, being able to come in and have, especially in Vancouver when you're playing for the Canucks. I mean, that's a big stage for a young kid, but he seemed to come in, and maybe he was nervous on the inside, but he certainly, I think you guys would agree, he didn't show that outwardly. And I thought Rick Tocchet, the way that he handled that goaltending situation just kind of made it seem like, who's ever in the net, we're gonna be fine. We trust Artie, and I think that does a lot too for a young kid's psyche, and to have the team really. I mean, they had no other option, but they really rallied around him, and I thought he was a big difference maker. You have a young kid; he's got nothing to lose if he comes in and he plays like crap. I mean, nobody would blame him or anything like that in that situation. And maybe Nashville wins that series, but he came in, he shut the door, and I thought he was awesome. I thought he was great in the next series too. Just couldn't get the goal support.
The nail biting series. Honestly, it was for Vancouver's re-entry into postseason. My goodness, was that nerve wracking. I was on the plane for the Besser goal, the tying goal there in the final seconds. It was crazy. One of the thorns in their side, though, was Kiefer Sherwood, who, of course, is now a member of the Vancouver Canucks. It seems, and it's just idle chat now, but they might be willing to give him a little taste here and there of some pretty advantageous positions. What's the ceiling for Kiefer Sherwood, do you think?
Well, I love him as a player, as a person. He's got a great story. If you go on his hockey DB or whatever, and you look at his offensive success that he had in the American Hockey League, he was the top scorer. He was one of those guys that, would light up the score sheet. And he's had a couple cups of coffee to try to make it in the NHL prior to the last couple years. But he completely changed his game. We call him the Huntsman on our broadcast because he's just relentless. The way that he forechecks and gets in and just hunts defensemen down, and he just never stops. He's feisty. He can agitate. And when he gets a good opportunity, I mean, they hem teams in with, his tenacity. And that's how Vancouver plays. And Tocchet is going to absolutely love the way that Kiefer Sherwood's going to fit in to the identity of the Vancouver Canucks, because that's his MO now. He really changed his game to finally make it in the NHL. I think his older brother, he had a talk with his older brother, Cole Sherwood, I believe. And, he kind of made the conscious decision that when I go up there, this is how I'm going to play. This is how I have to make a difference, by being that type of relentless, get on the forecheck, physical player, which it's every single minute is hard minutes. And I just really respect his journey, because I've seen a lot of players that have his offensive skill set that aren't willing to do that and never end up making the NHL. So I think, it says a lot about him and his character to be able to do that and do it effectively. You guys you're gonna love him. I mean, him and Dakota Joshua and all those kind of guys that get in there and just hound teams. I think he's going to be another one of those guys that's going to be really effective.
But it sounds like if you think that latent skill might be able to rise, if they give him a second line assignment because of injuries or something like that, you think he could rise to the occasion, find that offensive touch again?
They're talking about a look in the bumper spot too on power play too, Chris.
Yeah,
they love his shot there.
Yep, he definitely can. He's and a lot of seeing what a player's offensive capabilities does matter what line you're playing on, because quite honestly, sometimes you're on that third line and you're the energy line. Your job is to go get pucks and chip it in, hammer defensemen, get on the cycle and play that kind of gritty game. But he has had a lot of offensive success during certain stretches. He does have the skill set, the speed to be able to play power play minutes. And to be able to play higher if he has to, barring injury, or that's a great guy that you can move up and down the lineup, and he can be effective in any role that you want him to be.
Chris, we spent last question for me here. We spent Blake and I spent a fair bit of time this summer talking about the Nashville Predators, the signings of Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea in free agency, then the Askarov trade where they return a prospect and a first rounder. They have 7 picks in the first 3 rounds in next year's draft, including 3 first rounders on a pretty good team already, and they may even get some cap space if Philadelphia successfully terminates the Ryan Johansson contract. Boy, things look pretty well set up for the Predators this year, and Barry Trotz as GM has already proven himself to be pretty aggressive. What do you think? Predators going for it this year?
I think so. I really do. I think last season they didn't really know what they were going to have team-wise. Obviously, they brought in Ryan O'Reilly, Gus Nyquist, Luke Schenn. They wanted some guys that had a winning pedigree to really help mold the younger players and create a winning culture. They get into the playoffs. They did a lot better than anybody expected, I think, last season. And when you look at the core guys, Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg had maybe his best year of his career. It looks like he's kind of figured out how to be that perennial 40-goal scorer. And Luke Evangelista, a good young kid who really, I think, developed a lot quicker than maybe they anticipated. So you put yourself in a situation where if you do add a couple pieces like Stamkos, like Marchessault, Brady Shea, they had to obviously replace Ryan McDonough as they moved him back to Tampa Bay. But you're looking at a team, I mean, with their roster, I mean, you guys saw last year that they play hard. The Canucks and the Predators are actually very similar in the way that they play. But the difference to me in this series was they couldn't score on the power play. The Canucks did a great job on the penalty kill, but the Predators were missing the Stamkos. They're missing a guy like Marchessault, those extra guys that, can get the job done in those special team situations. And I think when you look at their roster now, you put them against anybody that I think is going to be one of the top teams in the West. I think they're in the conversation. And to your point, they've stockpiled the cupboards with draft picks. They got a great return for Askarov. I think he's going to go in a great situation for his career to San Jose. But this was a team and an organization that a couple years ago were in a rebuild mode, traded away Matthias Ekholm, got good picks for him, wanted to go younger. And then all of a sudden, I think last season, they're a lot better than anybody, including the people internally, thought they would be. So Barry Trotz recognizes Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg. These guys have a window. They're not getting any younger. And I think they believe they're putting themselves in a window now to try to go for it.
Yeah, 7 first-round picks marinating there who have yet to touch the NHL on top of 3 first-round picks in next year's draft. And Casper, boy, Nashville, absolutely a team to watch. Chris,
Nashville's a little like a Canadian team. Like, it's hard to land that big name free agent, but here they are. They've got free agents that, I mean, this is as much as I can ever remember Nashville putting chips in. So have some fun with it.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Chris, awesome stuff. Thank you for the time here today. Most appreciated, sir. All the best, and we'll call on you down the road here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on, and you're going to love Lankinen and Sherwood, I promise you.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
So, Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next interview brought to you by Mr. Lube and Tires. Change your oil, change your wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download a coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, only for a limited time at Mr. Lube, 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. And we welcome back to the program Mr. Cam Robison of Elite Prospects, who's joining us Tuesdays this year. How are you?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. How are you?
Fantastic. Good. So, since we last spoke, the Vancouver Canucks have added a goalie. They've added Kevin Lankinen. What were your thoughts on the signing?
I like it. I mean, I feel like they've been kicking the tires on him for a while, and he had that kind of contract offer in his back pocket. They need somebody with some NHL games experience, right? So he's got over 100 games in the league. He's been a proven capable backup. I mean, heck, he handled the starter's duty there in the, 21-22, where he started like nearly 40 out of 56 games at a .909 save percentage. I was going back through some of his numbers, and that year, he's been really good at even strength throughout his whole career, including last year. He had a .922 save percentage even strength that year when he was the starter, but an .881 on the power play. So he was just getting torched when his team was up a man, and that kind of cratered his overall save percentage numbers. So no, I think he's a quality netminder. I think he's someone who can step in if Demko's not ready and can handle a workload or a platoon with Šilovs. So I think it's a safe move. Cost him less than $900K on the cap. I like it all around.
Who makes more starts this season, Lankinen or Šilovs, if you had to guess?
I had to guess, I'd probably say Lankinen. That's just a pure guess on that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it doesn't end up like ostracizing Šilovs if that is the case, where he obviously wants to be in the NHL and has proven in that playoff run last year that he should be in the NHL. But I think it's going to be, we'll see them both get some action early, and then whoever the talk gets more comfortable with moving forward when Demko comes back will probably be the backup.
Opening night is Šilovs, though. Opening night to Šilovs, give it.
I think you should. I think absolutely, right? Like, I mean, Lankinen is just airlifted in. He hasn't been with this group. Šilovs is obviously, kind of a favorite in the dressing room there. He did it in the playoffs last year. I think you definitely have to start him on game one. But, if we're looking at body of work, Lankinen's probably just a hair ahead of him on the pecking order overall for their careers.
And he's done everything he can in Šilovs has in training camp right now to impress coaches. He's had fine performances to this point. So the preseason might mean a little something there, doesn't it, for the goaltending? I mean, do you have to show well there to earn starts in the regular season?
Oh, I think so. And, I'm not in Penticton, but, from talking to some people is that, the goaltending has, Šilovs has been fine, but hasn't been there and like been a world beater and been like, hey, I'm ready to be the number one if Demko's not ready to go. So I absolutely do think preseason is going to matter in this situation where normally in Vancouver, doesn't matter who's starting preseason games. We all know it's Demko starting the majority of the games in the regular season.
So our first chance to talk to you since you heard Thatcher Demko detail his injury, Cam. How concerned are you for Demko and his ongoing success? Because it sounds like it's just going to be something he has to deal with and play through going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's good and it's bad, I guess, right? Where it's like, this isn't something that needs surgery and he's going to be out for 6 months. And that could be a reoccurring thing like an ACL or something like that. But at the same time, when you're just like, hey, this is going to bother you, it's going to hurt, and you're going to have to figure out a way to play through it. Completely different. I am not an elite athlete, but I injured my elbow about a year ago. And they basically said, like, deal with it. Like, unless you want surgery and like a year recovery, figure it out. And it sucks. It's always kind of bugging me and nagging me when I'm working out or playing myself. And it's just something that you do have to get, kind of wrap your head around. That's like, this is how it's going to be from now on. And I mean, I'm not in his head, but normally when something is nagging at you and bothering you, it's not ideal. And it's hard to kind of get into that rhythm. So hopefully he can, but it will be a challenge for him here, at least initially.
Moving on, Cam, Nils Höglander was one of the stars of training camp in the scrimmage, drew praise for from the head coach, Rick Tocchet. Where do you think his best fit is this year?
It's so many moving parts in that top nine, right? Like, it's really difficult to say where his best spot is. I mean, his best spot is probably, next to Pettersson and across from DeBrusk. I think that would be a really great spot for him. And, kind of, he looks like he's ready to pop. He's kind of like a little ball of hate 2.0 out there. He has that jam. He's that mini power forward. He's not going to score at 20% again, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. But if he can increase his shot volume, he can, kind of mitigate that difference and still score 20 goals or 20 plus goals and have a career year. Now, I think a lot of this hinges on what Lekkerimäki's doing, right? Like, is he really ready to kind of take that job on that quote unquote second line? And if that's the case, Höglander's looked really good across from Garland here early in camp. So I think that could be a nice fit, especially with Joshua on the shelf. So he's one of these Swiss Army knives. He's so versatile that he could fit anywhere in that top nine. He could move him onto the other side. He could be up there with Miller and Besser. He's going to be, I think, a really useful piece for Tocchet to move around. And perhaps we'll see with all that energy, with that little bit of physicality, is that he might be one of these guys that can ignite a line that's maybe getting a little sluggish, and that he can move around and play up and down and kind of be that spark plug.
Well, you mentioned Lekkerimäki. He's amongst a group of young players. We used to remember how much we used to cling to prospects because the Canucks needed so much talent, and I was guilty of that in particular.
Blake,
yes,
that's what Cam does professionally. He clings to prospects across the league. No, you were talking to the clingiest prospect guy you ever clinged.
But he was agnostic for a long, long time. Now we're making him be non-agnostic and talk from a Canuck lens, so it's a little bit different. I'm almost equally as excited though about prospects in the preseason this time, because it feels like they're one player short, in particular down the middle. But it feels like they're one player short in terms of really having everything fall into place for them, because they've improved their depth so much. I mean, I look at Räty, but Lekkerimäki is an option too. Like, is there a way for one of these guys to actually earn a spot on opening night? Are the veteran presences of Nils Höglander and PDG just going to be too much for the coaches and even managers just to say cap-wise, it just doesn't work for us. Let's just start them down there. But is there a possibility? Is there something at stake for these young guys here in the preseason?
I think for Lekkerimäki, absolutely, because he is the crown jewel of the prospect cupboard and the only player in the system that has like viable 30-goal upside for this club. And so for him, he's 20 years old. He's coming off a great year. He's looking really good in camp. He's looking stronger. He's looking faster. He's playing on inside the dotted line. He obviously has some early chemistry here with Pettersson and DeBrusque. I mean, he's cheap. It's one of these situations that, if he can maintain that when the adrenaline starts to fade, right? So it's one thing to make the opening night roster, and it's another to stick there by the time November cruises.
That around, that 9-game trial is a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the juices are flowing early, and then as the grind of the season starts to wear in, it is tough on those young players. So I absolutely think Lekkerimäki has a viable chance to make this club as that second line winger. And then whether he can stick around is the big question. But as far as Räty, I don't think he has the juice. The center depth is actually like not bad in Vancouver these days on the big club. And so he would fully have to steal a job. And I don't think his foot speed is there yet to steal a job down the middle. And then you move over to the wings and they are just loaded up with pro players on the wings. And so, he looks like he'll be a call up, same with Baines. A lot of these young guys, Linus Karlsson, they have nice depth. These guys that might be more than quad A players, but I don't think any of them other than Lekkerimäki is like legitimately ready to push for a spot.
Cam, help me out with the scout. How's Lekkerimäki without the puck? How is he as a forechecker?
A lot better than he was. That's what I want to see. He's not going to be mistaken for Patrice Bergeron away from the puck, but he does have some good habits. And when he's focused and engaged, I think he can handle himself in the defensive end. He did so in the SHL. He was really strong at the World Juniors. His forechecking game, and I mentioned this last week, is that when I was in Sweden there for the World Juniors, that's what stood out the most to me was how hard he was getting in on that forecheck, using his body, getting physical, lifting sticks, battling, getting to the net front, battling, so he was adding those elements to his game. And that's an excellent sign because you need your high-end scorers to do that unless you're so good that you don't need to, which is so rare. He's going to need to do that to be able to continue his evolution into potentially being a first-line winger. So I think at this point, he would be slightly below par for NHL levels defensively, but he's a 20-year-old. But I think that he has enough juice and he could be, kind of mixed up well enough in that top six that it could be mitigated and that he could handle himself. And then the offense, that one-shot goal scoring ability from out high is just something the team lacks a lot of. And so he would bring that kind of dimension that they could use.
Do you need to get that?
No, I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Carson Soucy Vincent Desharnais or Tyler Myers, the second spot on the right side of defense, presumably beside Carson Soucy. What do you think is the best way to slot him there?
It's Tyler Myers for me. He's more mobile. He's a more known quantity. I really enjoyed his game last year for the first time in his Canucks career. And even in the playoffs too, like I thought he maintained that despite being 34 or whatever he is, that won't last forever. But at this point, I do think that he is the best fit next to Soucy. They have the chemistry already. They play together. They know how to handle things. And you would feel okay sending that pair out to shut down the opposition's top line. Now you put Desharnais on that line, it's going to be a little more physical. I mean, Myers is still a physical guy too, but it's the foot speed, it's the inconsistencies with the breakout passes. And him and Soucy, I think could be getting into trouble against some speedier versions. Now, the problem there is that now you've got Desharnais and Forbert on your bottom pair, and that is not the fleetest of foot, and that is trouble. You're going to really have to manage their ice time.
That's the third pairing you've ever seen, right? Like that is a third pairing.
That is a 7-8 pairing that you're missing your 5-6 basically. Yeah. And I've heard the good things about Darnay, that maybe the feet are looking a little bit quicker, but I mean, he's not going to be fast. And so I will reiterate that I think the number one priority for Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford is to find another right shot defenseman. Ideally, one who can push Myers down as well, not someone who can push Darnay down, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So a second pair right shot defenseman is number one on the list, or it should be anyways. And that's not an easy hole to fill, but I think that's got to be their job.
And does that circle back to Lekkerimäki? If Lekkerimäki makes it past the 10-game mark and is a National Hockey League player, does that free the Vancouver Canucks to use a winger to get that player?
Yeah, if that's what would get it done, I think that would open up all sorts of possibilities, right? If Lekkerimäki can prove that he's a legitimate 20-goal guy this year, then absolutely. But the issue is that in all likelihood, the team that you're getting a right shot defenseman for, they're going to want picks and prospects, right? They're selling their Rasmus Anderson because they want a first and a prospect. They don't want your third line winger.
Yes. Always the rub.
Are you done with the big club? I just want to ask them about a couple of prospects. If you're done, Blake. Josh Bloom, the Mem Cup hero, and Kirill Kudryavtsev both heading to Abbotsford. What do you think of the assignments there and how they'll fit?
Yeah. Bloom was obvious, right? Like he started in the minors last year and then couldn't hack it in the EC and got sent back down. And like you said, I think that was really promising for him to go to Saginaw and have that really fun playoff in Mem Cup. He's a fun player, a long road ahead, I would say, for him to be a viable NHL prospect. Now on the blue line though, Kudryavtsev, I'm a fan. I like him. I like it's kind of a no nonsense game, but it has puck moving. He's not a huge guy at 6 foot, maybe 6.5. But he just makes smart plays. He's got good feet. He knows how to defend the line. I think that's a viable NHL defensive prospect coming later in the draft. And those are the type of hits you need. You absolutely need to make those to sustain competitiveness. And so I think that he's going to challenge for like serious minutes down on the farm this year. And like, it wouldn't shock me if he saw NHL minutes this year. Like the fact that he was an early cut doesn't indicate that he's that close, but at the same time, I think he can play his way into that situation, Christmas and beyond if there's injuries.
Well, NHL coaches like no nonsense with young players. So if there is a route to games, he stylistically has the form that may well catch the attention of the NHL coaches. Awesome stuff, Cam. Thank you for this, my dude. We will catch up next week.
Cheers. Sounds good, boys.
Happy hour on Sekeres Price. Today's beer of the day, Neighborhood's Happy Place Juicy Pale Ale.
Sekeres Price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. Well, the big one tomorrow at BC Place for all the loonies. The Canadian Championship between Vancouver Whitecaps FC, the two-time defending reigning Voyagers Cup title holders, and the interlopers from Toronto FC. And Blake, do we have any more indication of lineups availability for tomorrow's match?
It's looking pretty good. The biggest wild card right now is Ali Ahmed. Has that deep knock. It's just a contusion, which is good for the long-term health of Ali Ahmed, but it's just, it's taking a little while longer than they expected. He's going to try fully training today. So by this evening, I think they've got a much better idea about Ali Ahmed, whether he's going to be on the roster, he's going to be available. But the question is he the first guy off the bench or is he starting? Him and Ryan Raposo will be interchangeable there. So if Raposo starts, it's Ali on bench or vice versa. So that'll be some of the CanCon for the Whitecaps. Sam Adekubi will be the Canadian on the other side, the other far side. And then Isaac Boehmer in net. It won't be Yohei Takaoka. He's been very clear, Vanni Sartini has on this being Isaac Boehmer's tournament, being the Canadian. So other than that, it's pretty much best 11 available. So Ali would normally be in your best 11. But otherwise, it sounds like they will probably go with Brian White and Ryan Gauld and Andres Kubas and everybody. So it's
what about TFC? They were out west anyways this past weekend, which is a little odd to be this deep in the season and playing games out west, but TFC already sort of travel adjusted I guess,
and resting Insigne for the most part on the weekend as well. So by all accounts, it looks like they're doing the same. Like across the middle, it's going to be Lorea, Insigne, Osorio, Bernadeschi. So it's going to be a toe-to-toe slugfest here. Both sides ramp up. I mean, for TFC, they're probably in the playoffs, but it's a little bit tenuous. This is a trophy they know they can buy for. Yeah. This really salvages their tournament or their season. So they're throwing everything at the wall here to salvage their year from a PR standpoint and from a satisfaction standpoint. So it's going to be great. And remember
on the weekend
after 90 minutes. Straight to PK. No extra time.
Yeah, that's wise. Yeah. That's wise. And as Mr. Price will tell you, the first
10,000 fans
are getting t-shirts. A made in Vancouver t-shirt. Ooh. Thank you to Sarita Patel. She dropped one off this morning as well as other goodies. So make sure you
get dropped off when I'm remote today. Yeah, of course. Just so happens, right? Just a coincidence, I'm sure. You probably organized that. Anyway, it all gets underway tomorrow. I don't know how many times we're going to have to scream the 7 p.m. start. Don't be late. It's not 7:30 like the league games. 7 p.m. kickoff at BC Place. And there's a double reason to get there early because as they look to three-peat and win the Voyagers Cup once more against TFC, 50% off all beverages until kickoff. So if you get there early, get a couple of beers in you at a cheap price, and you're off and running. Don't forget, tomorrow, 7 p.m., check it all out. Whitecapsfc.com to get your tickets. It's been really good atmospheres for these matches in the last couple of years.
It's been awesome. The community has gotten behind the Canadian championship. As mentioned, the Caps are two-time defending reigning champions and, of course, would advance to the CONCACAF Champions Cup if they were able to win this match. Okay. British Columbia Lions back at home Friday against Hamilton. Farhan Lalji reporting that with the CFL trade deadline a week away, multiple teams have reached out to the Lions to gauge the availability of Vernon Adams. BC is not interested in moving him this season. Coach Campbell was asked about the quarterbacks at practice yesterday. He said the best case scenario in terms of achieving quarterback consistency is, quote, Nathan plays and we win all our games. So we'll see if Rourke can complete this game. Of course, they made the move to Vernon Adams after halftime. Coach Campbell saying they needed a spark. They're coming off the bye. They're coming off having to suck on that home loss to Toronto after thrashing Montreal in Montreal. I mean, you won in the toughest environment in the CFL this year. You came home to what should have been a winnable game and just were not in it. Vernon's Ben Hladek and middle linebacker practiced. He's expected to play this week. Alexander Hollins, the receiver, it's not as serious as it first looked, but doesn't look like he is going to be able to go here for this week. He may need a couple more. That might be one where you're hoping to get him in the last game or in the last couple games going into the playoffs. Coach Campbell said he's not writing off David Mackey, the running back, who, of course, has proved valuable in short yardage on top of all his special teams work, although probably not this week. We'll see. And then Jarrell Broxton, the left tackle, also 2 to 3 more weeks, Farhan reports. So Broxton and Hollins, you just hope they're able to get back and get a regular season game in before having to get on out there for either the West Division semifinal or the West Division final. That would buy them more time, of course, the bye.
I wonder if the bye week just helps Nathan Rourke exhale a little bit. Got thrown into the fray, didn't get a training camp and all that. Like, I wonder if this is a good reset moment for Nathan Rourke. We need to see Nathan Rourke confident, being himself. And, I think there's an opportunity there. It should be noted on the out-of-town scoreboard, Matt, McLeod Bethel Thompson is going to get the start for the Elks as they try to pull off a bit of an upset and do the Lions a favor.
Yeah, rooting Elks against Winnipeg this weekend.
Yeah.
Seattle Mariners defeat the Houston Astros 6-2 in their 3-game set, the opener of their 3-game set, Bryce Miller just 2 hits over 7 innings. So the M's gain a half game on the wild card field. Look, the division is still not theoretically out of the question. They would effectively have to sweep Houston and win the remaining 3 games on their schedule thereafter, with Houston losing out to win the division. So it's a wild card focus for the M's. They're a game and a half back of both Kansas City and Detroit, who are tied for the final 2 wild card spots right now. They would also have to leapfrog the Minnesota Twins. Logan Gilbert goes tonight against Valdez, so another good pitching matchup against the Astros. The Tigers are playing the Rays, or at least are supposed to play the Rays this afternoon. There's rain in Detroit. Fantastic pitching matchup there. Tarek Skubal, who's going to win the AL Cy Young, versus Ryan Pepio, who had the immaculate inning last time out for Tampa Bay. Detroit also calling up their top pitching prospect, who may be the best pitching prospect in all of baseball, Jackson Jobe. So all hands on deck for the Tigers as they try and make the playoffs. The problem Seattle has is that Minnesota hosts lowly Miami this week, and Kansas City is in Washington to face the Nationals. So not exactly quality competition for 2 of the M's direct competitors in the AL wildcard chase.
I mean, they've got Houston. So you talk about the division being unlikely. I mean, you can do your own work here by beating Houston the next 2, and then it's only the A's. I mean,
they got the A's. Of course, those will be the last games for the Oakland A's. You wonder if there's any emotion or fire there. Look, they are 4 games back of Houston.
They'd be 2 if they sweep
even a
them.
Sweep, they'd be 2 back. So, and I'm not sure where the wild card stands. So you would effectively have to win all 3 against Oakland as well.
I mean, even to get the wild card, Matt, they should probably bank on 1 loss allowed only, right, in the final 5. Like, it's minimum 4-1 to have a chance. You should probably just sweep out anyway to give yourself the best opportunity.
May well be the case. Poll question results from Monday asked you, will Kevin Lankinen be important to the Canucks' fortunes this season? Yes or no? The people said
yes. They said yes.
Indeed. Percentage?
66.
85.
Woo.
Yeah. Andrew says yes. Don't trust Demko's health. Chris says if he's not, the Canucks are either having a really good or a really bad season. And then Burrow Steele says, and the future, when a team gives a 2nd-round pick for him. So he's on the same wavelength that we tapped on yesterday, and that is, could he be a trade piece if you're all systems go with Demko and Šilovs by the deadline? Errors and omissions from Monday's program. Should have mentioned that Kevin Lankinen has an 8-team no-trade clause as part of his deal. Blake, got to call you on this one. You made reference to the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs on April 15th. Of course, that would make a lot of logical sense. Alas, the first day of the Stanley Cup playoffs this year is April 19th. And our friend Karis Singera messages in. You were talking about Curtis Rourke, Nathan's younger brother, being high up the NCAA passer efficiency rating. You mentioned the Louisville transfer quarterback. Last name is Shuck.
That's Shuck.
Yeah.
Shough.
Yeah. And Karis knows this because he was formerly at Oregon. Of course, that was 2 schools ago. Transfer portal. You like your lot in life, you just transfer. Shucks. Well done. See what you did there. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We appreciate you connecting and spending some time with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, Twitter, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. We are live on many of those platforms, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the sponsors, community sponsors we tell you about. Keep it local.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.